the advice that's like, you should write at a second grade level so that you can have a bigger audience and that so more people will like be able to get your content. I hate that. Now, I understand you shouldn't be making content specifically to impress coaches using big words, using like, very specific anatomical terms that your ideal client isn't going to understand, right? You want to make it basic enough for the person who you want to reach to understand. But if you're writing at like a kindergarten level or whatever the bar is, fourth grade level, I don't know, writing so that anyone can understand it, I don't think you actually want a client who reads at a third grade level. Like, I don't think you want to work with that person as an online fitness coach.
This is an interesting discussion. Because I very often say you should be able to make something so simple a 5-year-old can understand it. With that being said, I think it's different in terms of what you are capable of doing versus what you actually do. So, for example, you should be so well versed in your knowledge and how to apply this and all that and how to explain it that if you needed to, you could explain it to a 5-year-old. But obviously you're writing at a 5-year-old level, like 5-year-olds, like, I don't know what their reading level is, but not very good. Yeah. Right. So it's like probably finding the balance between that like second grade level and college level. It needs to be somewhere in the middle, right? It's like, I think that even unless your target market is highly educated people within this arena currently, you know what I mean? It's very difficult.
I'm with you. So there are multiple purposes to writing. Like, writing is how we think. Mm-hmm. Like, it's really hard. It's hard to just sit there and think. Like, writing and fleshing out your thoughts is a good way to think. If you're intentionally dumbing yourself down, then you're dumbing down your thinking. And maybe you're doing writing that's non-content specific writing, but I don't know. I've just heard in too many guru-y places like, never use big words and always make it so simple a third grader can understand it. And when I think of going way back years, like the people who I've worked with who, don't understand grammar and just like give me, a block paragraph that's a whole run-on sentence. It's like, I don't want to be working with third grade reading people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I'm having all these different thoughts now because I agree in some ways. I disagree in other ways. I think it depends on so many things, not least of which who you want your clients to be. Also potentially the way in which you're distributing your content, right? Like if I'm doing a 60-second Instagram reel or a very an Instagram caption where it's relatively quick content to digest, I'm not going to make that complex because I don't have enough time to fully explain the nuance. So I'm going to make it more dumbed down and simple and practically applicable. Whereas if I'm doing a podcast or a YouTube where it's 30, 45, 60 minutes. Well, now I have the time to explain it in a very high level way and then go back and break it down and say, so this is how we explain it in a high level. Let's go back and break it down so you can understand it if you didn't understand that, and then reiterate it again at that high level so now you can internalize it. I think the longer form content, whether it's an article, YouTube, podcast, whatever, that's when you can use a much higher level of communication. But in the short form content, I think it does make sense to quote unquote dumb it down just so that you can get people who maybe if they only saw the high level discussion and they didn't understand it, especially nowadays, they might just quit. They might leave. They might go to something else. It's like so many different reasons. So using it as a way to get people into your gate, like open the gate to them so they feel a little bit more welcomed and not like, all right, well, this is going to be way over my head all the time, and then slowly educate them. Like that for me is my best client is not the one who comes in super educated. It's the client who comes in wanting to become educated. It's the one who's willing to learn and like, hey, teach me. Because sometimes the ones who are already super educated, they're stubborn. They have their ways to like, it's like, they're like, well, I know this is true, so how come you're doing this? It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, there are other reasons why. Whereas the people who are really willing to be educated by you, I think that's the best client.
Agreed. And I think the people who are willing to be educated by you are going to fire up dictionary.com if they don't understand something in your content, similar to what you and I have done when consuming people outside of the fitness industry over the last 5 years. It's like, oh, I don't really know what he's talking about. I'm going to Google that word. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know that word. That makes sense in that context. I think a lot of that learning, that person who wants to learn is going to figure out what you're saying. I also think that you're right that on short form content, if your goal is simply maximize audience growth, sure, cast a wide net, dumb it down, make it as palatable for as many people as possible. I agree with that. If that's your goal.
Yeah, do both. Like, do a little bit of both. But yeah, I think that makes total sense.